This is Hope and Help with Doctors Michelle and Mark Sherwood. Insights and interviews with a dose of straight talk to help you enjoy optimal health in all areas of life.
It's our mission and our job to help you uncover or perhaps expose those things that are taken away from your best health. Our guest today is none other than Mimika Cooney, and I've got a bio here for her. She is quite the impressive soul, I got to tell you. She's a motivational speaker. She's an author. I believe she's working on her 9th book. Yes, you heard that correctly. She's a mentor. She's host of the Mimika TV podcast. The Huffington Post, as we've all heard, nominated her as one of the 50 women entrepreneurs to follow in 2017. It doesn't matter what year that is. If you get put on that list, you are someone special. Podcasting Magazine has nominated her amongst the top 50 moms in podcasting in 2020, the year that, as we know, was the year of infamy. She's an international award-winning photographer from her 15 years spent running a portrait photography studio. She's passionate, and I know this from talking to her, about empowering and equipping Christians to unlock their personal potential and become the leaders as they were born to be. She's a certified John Maxwell speaker, a trainer, consultant, and coach. She's licensed to facilitate this world-renowned leadership training everywhere. She has quite a childhood story that we'll talk about a little bit, but it's allowed her to be passionate and compassionate about where she is today in the world. She loves honest conversations. She's going to lay it on us today in the South African accent with no holds barred, holding nothing back. And as you'll see, she is passionate. Mimika, thank you for joining us. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mark. I'm so excited to be here. I always cringe when people read my bio, kind of like, oh, really? Because that'll go into the story that I'll get into later about the whole people-pleasing thing. But yes, I'm just honored to be here and to be able to share my story where the Lord's given me an opportunity to be on a platform that I can actually share empowerment, as you mentioned, something I'm super excited about in helping others be the best that they can be.
It's awesome because you mentioned something about that people pleasing, and I want to kind of start right there if you're okay with it, because I like to use the term YES-a-holic. Does that mean anything?
YES-a-holic.
YES-a-holic.
Yes. Being a YES-aholic is one of those, people-pleasing syndromes where we're always so worried about what everybody thinks, and we're so concerned, is it going to make them happy? But here's the thing. You can't keep and make everybody happy all the time. Somebody's going to get upset sometime. And if you come from the school of thought that I was raised in, that you got to be perfect and you got to have it all together, and you got to act like you have it all together, even when you're freaking out inside, and just make sure that you say yes to everything, does not result in a good. Because at the end of the day, when you say yes to everyone else, you say no to yourself. And I unfortunately had the experience of experiencing physical burnout, where I couldn't get out of bed for 3 months because I had pushed myself beyond my limits, coupled with the fact that I had had a very emotional year where I had a business failure. Very soon after, I had one of my kids went through severe mental health issues where we had to intervene. And then I lost my mother-in-law from cancer. So talk about, a triple storm. It just piled on and piled on. But, I wasn't watching the signs. I'm not very good at taking directions when I'm on. My husband says I have 2 gears. I'm either full blast at 100 miles an hour, or I'm completely full stop and I'm laid out on the bed. And that's not exactly my idea of balance. So I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress. I have given up my membership to Control Freaks Anonymous, and I'm relearning new skills. So yes, I definitely know what that's all about when you're running on fumes and you just keep going, especially when you're in leadership and you have people looking to you for advice or knowledge, and they expect the leaders to have it all together. And unfortunately, leaders are the ones who struggle too, but it's almost like they don't want to feel like they can share their burdens because it all almost makes them weak. So we keep this facade, like everything's fine up here, but we like scrambling like crazy underneath. So yes, I definitely say, being a people pleaser is a very difficult place because it's really hard to keep up with that all. But if we can switch our thinking from being people-pleasing to be God-pleasing and just staying focused on what he wants us to do, that's really where success comes.
Mimika, why did you say yes all the time? Can you go into that? Because I like a lot of people struggle with that. They feel like they ought to, they should, and they feel like saying no is a bad thing, and we fall into that addiction, if you will. Why did you say yes? If you can share that.
So a lot of our people-pleasing habits comes from, I always believe we all have some junk in our trunk from our childhood, right? And for me, my story goes where I grew up in South Africa with an entrepreneurial father, and there was a lot of volatile anger issues and fear. So I only learned how to function in fear. Eventually, my parents got divorced when I was 10. And for me, it was all that, look at me, am I doing great? Does mom and dad love me? Look at me, I'm performing. And I also did classical ballet training since I was 3. So for me, I've always been in that performance mode. You've always got to pull it together and, straight back and arms and smile, no matter how you're feeling, push through the pain. I do believe that it's important to embrace the pain, and because that's part of the process. But for some of us, it triggers something in us that gets stuck. It's almost like a stuck record that no matter what emotions you feel as a child, they continue to follow us as adults. Because what I've realized is that emotions don't have an expiry date. So if you happen to be rejected when you were younger, or you had daddy issues, or you had, and coupled with that, when I was 13, I was severely bullied physically. So I had that traumatic experience which followed me. So I kept thinking, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Kept trying this and thought, well, it must be what I'm doing, and maybe with the way I look and the way I talk and things like that, skills and gifts that God gives us. For instance, being chatty, as you can tell, I love to talk. But I was always told, oh, shut up. You're so bossy. You talk so much. And eventually you start to try to please everybody around you. You start to be less of yourself. So for me, a lot of my people pleasing came from growing up with a root of rejection. And here's the thing, you can be 8 or 80. If you haven't dealt with those roots that have been implanted in you way back when, they will keep producing fruit that you might not necessarily like. Then eventually what happens is we try go into maintenance mode, and we try cut off a tree here and prune a branch here, and we'll pull off a fruit here. But if that tree was rooted in rejection or fear or anxiety or anger or whatever it was, it's going to keep growing. So that's why I believe in God is the ultimate gardener. He knows how to garden, how to help us to plow the soil to become good soil. So we plant good seed, so then we can be watered and get the sunshine we need from his word, and eventually grow up to be trees that provide fruit and shelter to other people. And that's why I feel so passionate about, for so many years I got stuck on this me, myself and I, and I wanted to be the perfect soloist, and forget about being in a symphony. I want to just be the soloist that would have it all together, and because I could control. And that's really what it comes down to, is when you have in an environment where you feel you have lack of control, like even when you're a child and mom and dad are fighting and you feel like, I can't do anything about this. Some of us make that promise to ourselves and a vow to ourselves that I will never let anybody make me feel like this again. And that is a vow, which is, God takes very seriously, that eventually we make with ourselves, that no matter what, we are going to make this thing happen, which is a lot of what we see in, society, high achieving millionaires and billionaires and celebrities. We always wonder, they achieve so much, yet they're the most broken, because a lot of the time they're trying to prove themselves to everybody else or trying to please everyone around them, especially, actors and all that. They've been trained to perform. So if you're not performing, you're not getting paid. So it's just this never-ending cycle. But for us, who aren't in the public eye, but have to deal with life on an everyday basis, if that seed of performance and perfection and people-pleasing isn't dealt with, it'll just repeat itself again and again and again. So that's why I'm so passionate about helping people walk through the process of uncovering and doing a work of inner healing, of inviting God into the situation and saying, God, what are those hidden areas that maybe I didn't even realize I had, that maybe when I was 6, something happened and I shut down emotionally. And that's the thing, is I feel in order for us to become victorious, we have to renew our minds. And what that means is we have to think differently. So what input are we putting in there? Because I can guarantee you, most people have a voice going on in their head. And sometimes if you had to record what was going on in your head, you probably would never speak to somebody like that. Oh, well, that was lame. Oh, what an idiot. Like, oh my gosh, no one's going to like you and that. Like, what a mean girl. Like, hello. Be quiet. I've learned that I don't have to listen to her. I call her Miss Biachi. She just needs to shush sometimes, because she ain't going to rule my life. So it is. We really, and that's what I would love to highlight to everybody today is that if you're seeing the fruits of things in your life that you're not happy with, let this be an invitation for you to look a little deeper, to ask God to come in and to highlight those areas. But it is a caveat, I will say. It doesn't come without a little bit of pain, because without the pain, even as a gardener, if you have to uproot weeds, you're going to be sweating a bit and it's going to be hard work. It's not necessarily going to be easy because especially if the roots have been there for a long time. But let me invite you and say it's well worth the process, because once you've de-weed your garden, all those fruits and trees and flowers that are there to grow and provide shelter and food and beauty to others will be far stronger and far more long-lasting.
That's so good and so beautiful and so appropriate for today. And obviously you've done the work. You've grown through that, and now you've got rid of the root of rejection that's bearing bad plants, bad fruit, etc. With that said, and I want you to kind of help people with this from a forecasting point of view, if you will. If you don't get the root of rejection dealt with, if you don't get that pulled out, two questions for you. What happens with people that you see and you work with? And then the other question is, where do you think you would be right now if you hadn't have dealt with it?
Well, that's a two-pronged question. So really, if we don't deal with the root of rejection, you'll have either one of two things. Is people will either implode and get very angry, and then anger creates depression. And I believe is also why we have a big issue with mental health these days, is because of those hidden roots. We like to, hide things under the carpet, especially in family relationships and dynamics. Like I meet and work with a lot of adults who still have issues with their parents, even though their parents are in their 80s, because of either abuse or, not feeling loved or rejection or whatever it is. And sometimes it doesn't have to be as serious as abuse, but it can feel like that. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that, God and his graciousness loves us just like a good father would. And it's hard for us, for those who've grown up in an environment where maybe we didn't have a great example of a father who was good and who was kind and who was loving. So a lot of the time we have to do a little bit more hard work and really uncovering who God is and how he made us to be. Because here's the thing, I could totally tell if I hadn't had what I call a huge wake-up call when I had to deal with those life where God's like, listen, you have to deal with this, whether you like it or not. Denial is no longer an option. Mm-hmm. Things have come to a head physically, your body, and this is the thing is, I really believe disease is dis-ease, because we are made up of three parts. We are a spirit where God resides, and Jesus and the Holy Spirit when we become saved. And then we have a soul, and the soul is often ignored. It's the mind, the will, and the emotions. And this is the area we need to be dealt with, because once it gets through to our body, that's when disease shows up. So, just physical being ill, when your body is run down, it's saying, hello, I can't handle this mental, emotional strain I'm going through. I mean, if you feel anxious, you get sweaty palms, your stomach gets tight, you might get a headache, you feel nauseous. Your body's saying, hello, somebody pay attention to me. So that's why I'm a big proponent of, not just popping a pill. I'm not saying don't take your medication. What I'm saying is the approach to fixing problems isn't to placate them or hide them or mask them. We really need to address, like if you put your hand on a hot fire, your body's response is going to tell you, take your hand off of there. It's hot. It's hurting. But what we've done in modern society, we've created entertainment. We've created apps. We've created phones. We've created everything to distract us from dealing with the important things. It's almost like people are uncomfortable with their own company, and they're uncomfortable with the silence, like being silent and thinking, why am I thinking like this? Why am I feeling like this? If I'm feeling anxious, instead of me just placating it with food or drinking or whatever it is, even for me, my addiction, as we mentioned earlier, was performance. Was like, how can I do something? Let me do. If I wasn't working and being a workaholic, I didn't feel I was being effective enough because I didn't want to stop and smell the roses and realize I needed to make a change. So I would not advise people do that, because the trajectory alternatively would have been, if I continued down that path, I would have been distracting myself as well as those around me. And I can tell you, when, I always believe that the man is the head of the home, but the woman is the heart. If her heart is broken, it affects everybody, the children, even the pets in the family are going to pick up mom's moods. So if her heart is broken and she's bringing brokenness from her past, can guarantee you they're going to be really difficult relationships with families. And this is what's so sad, is how things get perpetuated from one generation to another. Is we have brokenness in one generation, and then the next generation doesn't want to deal with it, and then it just gets habits and a culture within a family get passed down and down and down, and eventually the cycle continues. So let me invite everybody today that this is your opportunity to stop the cycle. If you're in a family, whether it comes from generational curses, and that's a whole nother story, but if you have something in your family, in your life, and you realize this is something that you know wants to change, allow yourself to be the advocate. Raise your hand and say, yes, God, I want to stop this. Help me fix this for myself and my family, because this is what I really realized in the crazy year that we've all lived through in 2020. 2020 gives us hindsight, right, and insights. And even though we've had the crazies of the world, what I'm excited about is that people are finally stopping to breathe and to think and to reassess and to look at this. And you know what? I've been doing this. I've been, like, for example, a husband been commuting to work every day, an hour and a half every way, never seeing his kids. And all of a sudden he's been forced to work from home. And all of a sudden he goes, you know what? I can work from home. I don't need to be traveling anymore. The necessity, it's like it breeds creativity. So I'm excited about how, because the world has been forced to slow down, hashtag the rat race has been cancelled. Hooray. Finally, we can actually get off that bandwagon and start to think, is this how I'm meant to be? Is this what God designed me for? Maybe I'm in the wrong situation or the wrong place, or the wrong job, or the wrong life, or the wrong time. Like, sometimes we can try fight and pretend that things aren't right, but by allowing God to realign us into our purpose, saying, this is what I designed you to be. Stop worrying about Susie Q and what she's doing with her business because she made money doing that. Doesn't mean you can by copying her tactics.
Yeah.
What has God got for you? And stop trying to please the world. Focus on what God has for you. Put those blinders on. And I'm telling you, I'm preaching to the choir because this is something I have to deal with all the time. And I'm not to say I have this handled. I have to remind myself daily, because I know it's one of my weaknesses, is that if I don't remind myself, what has God got for me today? Is this for me? And that's when you realize you can shift from a scarcity to an abundance mindset. When you're in scarcity, you think that all the opportunities are going to be gone tomorrow if you don't take them up, or if you don't do this, and someone else is going to steal your idea, or someone else is going to get that opportunity you feel you deserve. That's a scarcity mindset. And that's not how God wants us to function. He wants us to function from an abundance mindset. So when we see Susie Q doing well in her business, you can applaud her and say, oh, that's so awesome. I'm so excited for her. And that's going to motivate me to want to do better for myself. So that's why I'm super passionate about what I do and excited, because I've seen the transformation in shifting people's thinking and helping them to really understand. I kind of think of taking the blinders off. I'm great in helping people to peel the layers back, to understand what is the core of who God made me to be and where does God need me? Because here's another thing. As adults, we get more mature, but sometimes we can still behave in a very immature manner. If you think about a 5-year-old who meets Santa, he sits on his lap, Santa, I want this, and I want a car, and I want a Barbie doll, and da, 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 da. And that's often how we approach our relationship with God, is we come to him with a Christmas list. And then we get disappointed on Christmas Day when things don't arrive as planned, and then we feel sorry for ourselves. But God isn't like that. He wants us to partner with him, because we are meant to be an army. We are meant to be going out there to help others. And if we're so worried about our own little list and what we didn't get and how we wanted our prayers answered, we get stuck. So again, it all comes down to who are we pleasing? Who are we focused on? And who do we want to make happy? And at the end of the day, once we shift that focus and say, God, I know you have more than enough for me. That doesn't matter what everyone else is doing around me. Sometimes it's their time. Sometimes they've put in 10 or 20 years of hard work to get their success. There's no point in me being, jealous of that and feeling woe is me and having a pity party because I don't feel like it's working for me. When we shift into that abundance and knowing that God has more than enough for me, and in his timing, because remember, God's the ultimate gardener, just like we look outside and we see the seasons. If you're in a winter season and it feels like there's no growth and the ground is hard and it feels like it's dry and it's arid, and a lot of people are like, God, give me the first get out of jail card. And I can tell you, the winter season is actually when the most growth happens. Because if you think about when you plant a seed, first of all, you got to toil the soil, which can be hard, and getting those rocks out. And, we get all those bad roots out. Then we plant the new seed, but we don't see the growth immediately. germination happens in the dark, and it's dirty, and it's like cold, and nobody knows what's going on. But at the right time, when the season changes and the timing is right, God says, okay, now it's time for you to break through. You are strong enough. You have the roots that are rooted in God. You know exactly where you need to be. You're in the right garden patch, and then you can start to grow. Then eventually that crop will extend past and get so much further, because God is a God of multiplicity. He doesn't believe in us gaining and doing things for ourselves. Just think about how Jesus was like, with the whole story of the loaves and fishes. It's great how, a lot of people know the story as faith. But for me, I see it how God looks at it and he says, I believe in your little things. I believe in your small beginnings. You just give it to me, and together we can multiply it. So that's why I'm so excited about helping people refocus themselves, realign themselves, and say, God, what have you got for me? Let me partner with you, because it's much easier to partner with you than to try and do it on myself off way over there where I'm not even meant to be. That we become more effective and much more productive for what he wants us to do in our lives.
That is like so good. And folks, I hope that you're listening to this. And I'm telling you right now, you're going to have to go back and listen again and take some notes, because those were to tag on to the garden. Those were seeds of wisdom, seeds of experience. And I have seen it, and I think you'll agree with this. And then I want you to talk about this number 9 book, Mimika. I have seen this in the clinic along with my wife, that the majority of manifestations of physical diseases are rooted in spiritual and emotional brokenness. And when we get behind that, just mysteriously, but also, as we know, predictably, the physical disease manifestations resolve themselves, because most of the time our roots of brokenness yield crops of illness. And that's a sad reality, but I hope people really get this. And you obviously exude with great passion. And I love this. I'm so honored to be acquainted with you and to call you at this point friend, because you are truly a gift to this world. And with that said, you've written 8 books. You're working on number 9. So here we are in 2021 early. Tell us about book number 9. What's it called? What's it about?
Well, I'm so excited to have the opportunity where I can do the things I love. Because back when I was a kid, I always loved writing, and I had my little journal, and, dear diary, and I'd write all those things out. And I never thought for one moment that I could actually do these things as an adult. And again, bringing in the people pleasing thing, I just did things and ended up in marketing and business, which I'm happy about. But I still didn't have that connection to what I wanted to do. So fast forward all these years, after I experienced that really difficult time with my family where, I had the physical burnout, I'd realized that I was going through something that needed time. And during that process, I've reverted back to my old habits of journaling, because I like to process things through writing. So as I was going through these things, dealing with the grief and, the anxiety and all these things, as I was journaling, then God was saying, you are in the process of writing a book. And I was like, what? Say what? What are you talking about? No one's meant to see this. This is nasty. I don't want anyone to see this. And eventually I realized, he said, let me rephrase it. I didn't go through this for no reason. Not to say that God caused the pain. He can use it. He says this can be great fruit for other people to help them through the same thing. And that's what I'd realized, that it hit me like a ton of bricks the one day, that writing and sharing testimony and story has power, because it says in the word, there's power in our testimony in the blood of the Lamb. And which means that when we share with others how God has helped us through a situation, it empowers them to take the steps that they need to get unstuck and to move towards their blessing. So through that process, I'd realized I was writing a book. So I had previously written more how-to marketing books in the business space. But really in 2016, I felt the Lord was calling me to share my story. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, I fought this. I didn't really want to do this. This is scary. Why do I want to do this? But I'd realized it wasn't about me. It was about the people that I was meant to help. So I published the book, and soon after I published a smaller book called Mindset Makeover, how to renew your mind and walk in God's authority. The first one was Warrior to Warrior, a mother's journey from fear to faith, which is really my story of walking through this dark period, going through what some people call the dark night of the soul, working through that inner healing process and allowing God to walk me through step by step, everything from fear and anxiety, pride, depression, people pleasing, rejection, and really looking at it from a scriptural perspective. And since then, like I say, once the bug bites and you realize how important books are, and when you get onto this, and now that I've got my system down, I can actually write them much quicker. So right now I'm in the draft process of writing my book number 9, which is called Heart of a Champion: How Ordinary People Achieve the Extraordinary with God. And the reason why I'm excited about this is it really empowers people to realize that they don't have to be super special. If you just think about it, we think about the characters in the Bible and we're like, Mary and Daniel and Joseph, they were so amazing and they were so special. They must have been born with halo around their head. And what I've realized is they were just ordinary people. The big difference is they were completely surrendered and they said yes to God. That is it. That's all the requirement God needs. He just needs a willing heart, somebody who's able to do the work, and who's able to, no matter what their mistakes, because we all know, even if you look at King David, everyone thinks he was this fabulous king, but we know he messed up real bad. Mm-hmm. But when God saw him as a kid, he saw something in him that he could use because he was teachable, he was surrendered, and he was willing to do what God wanted him to do. Like I always liken the story of, we all know the story of when David killed Goliath, and everyone's like, whoa, what a hero. And that's why I believe mindset's so important, because if you think about the story, really, back when he was there, his brothers had been camped out, in the valley opposite to where Goliath and his camps were. And in the Bible, it says that every day that Goliath would come out taunting them and teasing them and saying mean things, really verbally abusing them. And then so David comes along and, he's like, I'm going to go take my brothers some food and put some, in my rucksack. And he's like, hey, bros, how's it going? Why are you all so sad? What's with the long faces? And he's like, oh, we're not going to win. There's this guy, Goliath out there. He's taunting us. So David goes out the tent, looks at this dude and sees him acting belligerently and, shouting profanities. And he's like, oi, did you just insult my God? I'm going to give you a piece of my mind. So out he takes a stone and throws his stone and whacks him dead. So he severed him from his mind, and he took action because he was not privy and being in this environment of being, abused mentally and being told what an idiot or how bad or how stupid he was. He didn't believe that because he had stayed focused on God. And the other thing to remember is God didn't expect him, he even tried to put the armor on, and it wasn't going to help because if it doesn't fit, if the outfit doesn't fit, it's not going to work for you. What tools worked for him was the smooth stone, the sling, because he spent hours and hours and hours on the brook looking after his sheep, minding his own business, practicing. So God will always use what we already have. He doesn't expect us to be something we're not. And that's where it ties back to the people-pleasing things. If we stop trying to please everyone and wear somebody else's shoes, I have this saying that I created a Pinterest graphic that says, trying to wear someone else's shoes is ill-fitting, uncomfortable, and not my style. Because what is the point of walking in someone else's shoes if they clearly don't fit? So, that's why we need to think, are we doing things in a way, using the tools, wearing the outfit, being in the situation to please everybody else? Because we cannot be effective if we are in walking someone else's path. So that's why it's so important to understand that, we all have a champion within us. We all have that calling that he's looking, he searches, he's roaming the earth, looking for people willing. If we're just willing to say, okay, God, use me however you want, I will give up my Control Freaks Anonymous card. I will stop trying to be perfect. You just use the loaves and fishes that I'm giving you, and it might not feel like much, but God is the God of multiplicity. He is the one who helps to grow, that as long as we're willing and able and will surrender, he will do great things in us.
Man, this is incredible. Mimika, I just, one word is wow. This is so deep, so rich, so potentially fruitful. If people will grab a hold of this, how do people, all of our listeners, and I'm telling you right now, I want you to connect with her, get these books in your hands, especially this brand new one, Heart of a Champion. How do people connect with you? What's the best way?
Definitely. Well, I always say, no matter where you are, wherever you find me, connect with me on my home base, which is my website, which is mimikacooney.com. And for our audio listeners, it's MIMIKACOONEY.com. And on my website, I have a bunch of resources. Like every book I write, I have a free resource. So there's prayer guides and there's checklists. So definitely come along, and once you grab one of those, you'll get on my email list, and you will get regularly information about my podcast, which is Mimika TV. We are in season 5 now. We've been going since 2013. And just like you, I love to have a platform to be able to share things where I do teach, offer some teaching and sharing and mentoring. And then if people want to work with me, I do group mentoring as well as one-on-one coaching. And all the information if they want to learn more about me. And I'm on all social media platforms as Mimika Cooney. And all my podcast interviews are also video, so you can always watch us as well as listen. So we're on all the audio platforms like Stitcher and Apple iTunes and all those good places. But definitely, I would invite you to come to mimikacooney.com and come grab one of my downloads, and let's connect there.
Folks, please do. I was scratching notes feverishly here, and I just got to tell you, Mimika, my 3 takeaways is the scarcity versus abundance. Man, that's powerful. We got to get rid of scarcity and get a hold of abundance. And then I had number 2, denial cannot be an option. You got to deal with it. And then number 3, and I want people to, all of us, to embrace this. I'm an encourager. You're an encourager. But encouragers need encouragement. And the best way to become encouraged is to give encouragement. And I want to encourage you, Mimika, right now, that to tell you that you've encouraged me, and I appreciate it so very much. And I know you've encouraged all of our viewers and listeners as well. And I certainly can't wait to see our relationship grow and to see you again, come back on again. I would be so honored to have that. That'd be so cool. And there's people out there right now that are in the same place you were. What are you going to tell them in their final words?
Well, I would just say, don't give up hope. You are not alone, because a lot of the time when we go through hard things, the enemy tries to keep us in isolation, especially if we think about the world we're living in and how we are kept separate from everyone else. That is really how we are. We are on our own, and we left our own devices with our own thoughts. Sometimes we can get up to all sorts of trouble. So let me encourage you today that you reach out, find resources, read books, listen to podcasts, watch videos, connect with other people, broaden your mindset, because at the end of the day, you can only grow personally when you have awareness. Living in denial is not an option anymore. We have to deal with these issues. If we want breakthrough, we can no longer throw our own pity parties and be victims in the corner. We have to decide today whether we are willing to stand up, do the hard work, and be the victors we want to be, because there only are 2 ways, is to go through something, and the only way to endure that is to push through and embrace the pain, because without pain is no gain, right? And that's why I'm excited to share that with people, and just to embrace that sort of go-getter. Everyone can do this. It's not just a sugar-coated yay being a cheerleader. Like, no. People who know me, will get connected to me, know that I am a straight shooter. I'm going to tell you that ain't working. Like, one thing I didn't mention earlier was I actually do competitive figure skating, but I was not a skater as a kid. I learned to skate at the age of 33 after going to the rink with my daughter on a birthday party, and realized it's something I always wanted to do. Now, my background is a ballet dancer, and we were always taught, straight back, shoulders back, tight. You cannot do that on the ice. It's counterintuitive. You will fall over. So as a personal mission, for the last 10 years, I have been retraining my mind and my body and my muscle memory to adapt to this new way of doing things. And the only way to do that is through repetition, doing it again and again. I've had a coach that I show up at the rink every week. Every Tuesday, she knows I'm going to be there, and she will not let me off the hook, because accountability is important. I would much rather stay at home in my jammies, thank you very much. But if she's not going to tell me to get off my tushes and get myself on the ice, whether I feel like it or not, some days are good days, some days are bad days. I even arrived there when I got sick the one day, and she's like, you don't look well enough. You need to turn around and go home. But I made myself go there. So I would encourage people today that make sure that if you want to grow, first of all, you make the decision that it's time for change. Denial is out the window. Second of all is being aware that there is a problem, because if we don't realize we have a problem, we cannot fix it. And thirdly is to make the decision and to take the baby steps. So whether it's go for a walk each day, or change your diet, or read a positive book, or listen to a podcast, or start writing the book that you want by journaling. Start with baby steps, because there's a thing called compound interest. Einstein came up with the theory of relativity and all that kind of stuff, but the most important thing he taught about was compound interest, that little disciplines practiced every day will eventually result in the success that you need to get to where you are. It's not this overnight success thing that, oh my gosh, I'm just going to put it in the microwave and for 2 seconds and it'll be done. Sorry, honey, that's not life. So I'm really excited about being able to share this and training with the book that's coming out, as well as a mentorship program that's going to accompany the book to help people walk through this process, because I know the importance of accountability. I can hand you a book and it's great and life gets busy, but if someone's not going to say, I'm going to see you at Tuesday, we're going to show up and do this, it's not going to happen. So I'm really excited about connecting with people and sharing those resources.
That is so powerful. And really, I want to encourage you folks to listen to this again and again. Really, and as always, I'm appreciative to our guests, but especially you, Mimika. I just really want to thank you for sharing these. These are not pearls of wisdom; these are boulders of wisdom, and I'm grateful for that. So
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's awesome. Folks, that is Mimika Cooney, mimikacooney.com. All the links will be at the bottom, and all of her resources are there on the website. Get in there, connect with this warrior. She is, and she will help you. I'm getting on there, and I'm going to start downloading some resources because I want to be on our list, and I want you to get on our list too. And I mean that with all of my heart. Folks, as always, we're grateful for you to be here with us today. And as I always ask you, subscribe, find out who's coming, what's coming next. And don't let the things we've talked about today and other things that we've talked about before steal your best health. You're more valuable than that. And there's a plan for your life that God has. It's so big, so amazing. Let him have all of your life, and you'll experience exactly what Mimika talked about today.
Doctors Mark and Michelle Sherwood and their clinic can help you find the hope and health you were created to enjoy. Go to sherwood.tv for clear, proven ways you can be healthier. Subscribe at sherwood.tv